Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our educational series, Are You Using the Right Fax Solution?, with our special guest, FaxCore. Today is part 3 of a 4-part educational series focusing on many of the industry's leading fax solutions. We've heard from many of our customers, particularly RightFax users, who are looking for more innovative and cost-effective solutions to solve their critical document delivery needs. So today, we're very happy to showcase our longtime partner, FaxCore. I'm very pleased to introduce today's speakers, Tom Linhart, founder and CEO of FaxCore, along with Chris Kaiser, product manager and one of the preeminent technical experts on the FaxCore product. My name is Julie Fraguia, and I am also pleased to be joined by Fernando Lopez, sales engineer for Instant Info Systems. We have a fantastic team of product and technical experts standing by today to answer your questions. Speaking of questions, just a little housekeeping for our session. On the GoToWebinar control panel, you'll see a Q&A box where you can type in your questions as we go. At the end of the presentation, we will answer as many questions as time allows. But rest assured, if we don't have time to get to your question, a product specialist from Instant Info Systems will reach out to you personally and get you the information that you need. For those of you joining us for the first time today, allow me to give you just a brief overview of Instant Info Systems. We have been leading fax experts for more than 23 years. And have developed a great depth of expertise in fax technologies and products. That means when you work with IAS, you can rest assured that you are getting the fax solution that is right for you and an unparalleled level of technical support and services to keep your environment running smoothly. We feel very fortunate to have a long-standing partner with one of the undisputed leaders, FaxCore. FaxCore has been a pioneer in cloud and hybrid faxing and offers one of the most full-featured and cost-effective solutions on the market today. So together, our combined focus on meeting our customers' needs ensures you benefit from a sophisticated fax solution backed by the industry's leading implementation and support services. Plus, IAS brings more than 20 years' experience working with RightFax. So if you are considering replacing your RightFax server, as many of our customers have already, there is no one better able to ensure that migration is smooth and seamless. So with that, I am very happy to turn the presentation over to my friend and colleague, Tom Linhart.
Great. Thank you very much, Julie. Appreciate that. And thank you, everyone, for taking some time out of your day today to learn a little bit more about our product. We're going to keep this kind of high level, but we'll go through a little bit of overview of FaxCore as a company, the product, and we'll show you how it's actually used by the people in your company. And as we wrap up towards the end here, like Julie said, we'll leave some time for Q&A. So the FaxCore is a company. We're relatively speaking the new kids on the block, started in 2002, but the people behind the product and the company have been industry veterans, some of them dating back into the late 1980s, so really pioneers in the field. And what we saw about, if you recall, the dot-com boom and bust and email becoming more prevalent, what we saw was a lot of the leading fax servers back then thought, okay, it's all over, we're going to have to find something else to do, email's going to put us out of business. I didn't see that. Our customers, the fax servers, were mission critical, they were expanding, and so we took a chance in developing a next generation product that we like to call built in and for the internet age. And it's paid off really well for us. We're still growing rapidly, and people are still questioning, are you serious, fax? But yeah, as you know, it fulfills a critical messaging, secure messaging requirement for particularly financial, healthcare, etc. And the press has noticed we won more product awards than all the other fax servers combined, as well as 7 in a row Product of the Year awards from Internet Telephony magazine. And then, let's see, we also, so a little bit about how FaxCore is built. Like I said, built in and for the internet age. And my experience goes back into the early 90s, and having dealt with IT managers and implementing and supporting fax server systems, I knew that, ideally you don't have to install any client software. So to achieve that, FaxCore actually just uses a browser. We run on IIS, and our user interface is either Edge or Internet Explorer, Firefox, Chrome, or Safari. So we've got them all covered. It's built on the Microsoft.NET framework 4.5. And then we also knew that recall working with the IT administrators, and they didn't really like having to install a connector on their Exchange server to add email to fax functionality. So FaxCore actually has its own built-in SMTP listener and sender services. So we can integrate in with any email system without installing any software on it, and that also allows us to work seamlessly with Office 365. A couple of other innovations, we have rendering engines that do not require the native application to be installed on the server, so you don't have to load up Office and Adobe Reader, for example, on your fax server in order to convert those file attachments coming in. And we've been a long-time partner with Dialogic. We support all of their range of fax boards and their SR140 fax over IP drivers. And I think another differentiator about FaxCore is we're always first to market with the latest updates that come out of Dialogic. So if when they issue an update to their SR140 drivers to solve some sort of a problem or issue or make their drivers more stable, we're the first ones to incorporate that into our fax drivers. So you're always going to be running on the latest and greatest from Dialogic. And with our web services architecture, FaxCore can be built out and scaled to really support very high volume environments. In fact, a number of the leading fax service providers have actually built their service offering on the FaxCore platform. Our largest customer has 800 fax lines and is doing about 20 million pages a month. So this can scale out really big, and something that you're not going to outgrow in your organization. So said we'd go through a little bit about how FaxCore works. There's three main ways that a user will send a fax from their desktop PC. The client print driver, which is I prefer, seems to be the easiest. So if I'm in, if I need to fax out a quote, or maybe I'm in an accounting application and our office manager needs to get an invoice or a purchase order or statement faxed out, it's a simple file print, select the FaxCore print driver, and then this dialog box pops up. As you'll see, it automatically pre-populates the sender name and company. And then you've got a subject line. There's a section in there for cover page notes. And then you'll notice over on the right center, we actually also provide a preview of what the fax looks like. So if it's a multi-page document, you can drop down and take a look at it if you want to make sure everything's paginated correctly or is in the right order. All of that's available to you. And then you can either just one-off type the recipient name and fax number in, or we offer a variety of different address books that can be personal, just so that only that user can add entries to it and see it, or there's shared address books that can be set up by administrators that can even do an OLADB or ODBC link to a database. So the client print driver is very intuitive and easy to use, and that is the only software that would ever get installed outside of the FaxCore server itself, and that's optional. And for large organizations, we do have an automated routine to where that can automatically be pushed out to desktop PCs. And then the next one, a lot of people, if they don't use our client print driver, they like to use it email. And so faxing from Outlook is a common way to do it. And all you have to do is create a new mail message. In the to field, if you've got your own Exchange server in-house still, with your contacts, if you put a fax number in that contact, that's called the business fax address. And so you could actually select the business fax address of one of your contacts, put that in there. That email message will then relay over to the FaxCore server. Anything that's typed in the subject line of the email goes in the subject line of the cover page. Anything in the body of the email goes in the cover page notes section. And then you just attach the files that you want to send. FaxCore supports hundreds of different file types, but pretty much it's Office and PDF files that are being faxed. If you're using maybe an external email such as Gmail or Office 365, what you can do is set up a domain name for the FaxCore server, edit DNS to put that in there, and then the other syntax is just the fax number at faxtoyou.net, for example, or whatever you name your fax server. Once that email is sent, FaxCore gets it, sends the fax, and then the recipient typically gets an email back letting them know that they've, the status of the fax that they sent. The third way is actually using the FaxCore user interface. And again, it's just from the FaxCore, you just type in the name of the FaxCore server in your browser. That logs you into the server. You can click New Message, and then this screen pops up. Very similar to the format of the client print driver screen, subject line, cover page notes, etc. And then from here, you can attach documents. FaxCore has a lightweight document server in there. If you wanted to, maybe you're frequently faxing out the same document, terms and conditions, things like that. They can be stored in folders, pre-rendered, ready to pick, as well as you can attach documents from your PC or network server. Just attach those. Over on the Options tab, there's additional settings where you can say, send this out tonight at 7 p.m. or tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. So more advanced functionality is available in the user interface. So that pretty much covers the different ways that people send and receive faxes through FaxCore. On the received faxes, typically they're coming in via email, but our user interface kind of resembles Outlook Web Access, if you will. So there is an inbox, and you can view the faxes there. Again, they just open up in a browser. And then the next way that we do it is through actually go back to that one, Mark. In addition to the user interface, from an application side, FaxCore includes a .NET-based SDK, so SOAP XML. We provide that for, that's included with the core product, no extra charge for that. And we provide sample code. So a lot of times people are up and, they've got the integration with our API done within a day or two. Very simple and straightforward. If any of you are running SAP, FaxCore integrates in with SAP using the SAP COM server and SAP Connect module. So that's the standard and preferred way for SAP to integrate with third-party applications. Sometimes we work with people that've got ERP systems that are emailing out invoices and purchase orders and statements. So SMTP is a very straightforward way to automatically fax those documents. Again, just using that format of fax number at and then the name of the fax server. A lot of times back in the 90s and over the past dozen years or more, companies would prefer to use a print queue, and then in the print stream embed codes in there, special codes that would provide destination information such as recipient name, fax number, cover page notes, etc. WriteFax has embedded codes, as do we. FaxCore has and can emulate and process those WriteFax embedded codes. So that's something that also Instant Info is very good at consulting with and helping you take those legacy integrations and either do it a new way, a preferred way with a .NET web service, .NET-based web service, or through embedded codes. And then we've also done a lot of work as far as integrations in with phone systems. We were, if not the first, one of the first fax servers in North America to integrate in with Cisco Call Manager. This goes back to about 8 or 9 years. We're also an official partner with ShoreTel, a member of their innovations network. So if any of you are using ShoreTel phone system, then their IPPBX, FaxCore integrates it with it over SIP trunks and using the Dialogic SR140 drivers. And we're also Avaya DevConnect certified on both Aura communications system and IP Office. So it's we've done a lot of work to ensure interoperability, and it's important to have that because, like ShoreTel, for example, if you're needing assistance from them to get this working, the first thing they're going to do is say, "Are you an approved vendor that we've already done testing with and or as a member of our program?" If you're not, they just won't help you. So this is really important to have those official blessings. We also do a lot of work with document management systems. M-Files is a very fast-growing one. PaperCut, that's an interesting product that goes out on a lot of MFPs. We've done integrations in with them, leveraging single sign-on, things like that. There's multiple companies in the healthcare space that have integrated in FaxCore into their applications. and or even OEM our server into their application that they push out to their customer base. So a lot of integrations there, and if the integration is not done, we've got some special ways that we can drop faxes into a hot folder. In fact, on the next screen here, we talk about how FaxCore can just drop a fax into a folder using our file notifications. And Mark, if you can change that. Oh, okay, I got out of order here. Yeah, go back to that screen there, I'm sorry. We'll touch on the file drop in a minute. The other thing that we've done a lot of work in is our integrations in with office equipment companies like Xerox, so you see the list here. All of these products offer an API or an SDK. In the case of Xerox, for example, it's their EIP, Extensible Interface Platform. HP, we do it through their DSS, their digital sender software. Ricoh has a kind of a web-based kit that we use. Canon, we can integrate in with Canon MFPs using Uniflow, which is a company that they own that does a lot more than just integrate in with FaxCore, or eCopy. If any of you have used eCopy, that's now owned by Nuance. We have an eCopy connector. We're also a member with Konica Minolta and into their BEST program. And Sharp, we were the first company in the world to integrate with the Sharp OSA 2. That was back probably 10 years ago or so. And now we're on their latest SDK, which is OSA 4.5, I believe, and 5.0 just recently came out. So a lot of work done there. As far as the benefits to the, why would you want to integrate an MFP into the fax server? From a financial perspective, those fax kits, to put a fax kit in the MFP can cost like $1,000. And so if you've got a fleet of 20 machines, and that's $20,000 in fax kits, plus you have to pull phone lines out to it, and so a fax server eliminates the need to buy those fax kits, and it eliminates the hassle of having to pull phone lines out to every one of those locations. In addition to the financial perspective, I think it's even more important that it provides you an audit trail. If you think about it, somebody who sends a fax through a fax line and a fax modem, you really don't have a digital audit trail of who sent what, when, and where. But when that fax goes from the MFP through the fax server, you've got an audit trail. You know who sent it, what was sent, when, and where, and you've now got a central repository in that FaxCore server for every fax that goes in or out of your company, regardless of whether it came from a desktop PC or an MFP. And we've also have a way to integrate fax machines into the mix, and we'll touch on that in a couple of slides from now. So now this is back to the document management integration. I mentioned the file drop. A lot of times they just have a folder that they'll set up. It's a hot folder where the doc management program constantly pulls that folder looking for files that have been dropped in there. So FaxCore, one of our notification options is to drop a copy of that fax into a file folder as a TIFF or a PDF file. And then you'll notice on there, we give you like message ID. That's a token or a value in the database that, in our SQL database. And so you can use those data values to build out report, in addition to the file name, report file that corresponds to that fax image. We've done integrations in with some of the document management programs where they want the metadata about that fax, such as date, time, pages. Was there any barcode data in there, for example? And we can put that into a report file, format it any way they want it, CSV, XML, whatever, and then the doc management program can actually pick that up and use that data to begin the indexing process of the fax. These notifications are kicked off for both received and sent faxes, if you like. So we've got Allianz, for example, in Hong Kong has about a 20-line FaxCore server, and they want every fax coming in automatically printed out at network printers. And they wanted an easy visual way to separate those print jobs. So on our print notification, we actually would overlay a unique message ID and reference number over in the white space on the left side of the page, horizontal, vertical, excuse me. And then so people could just, flip through the paper and say, okay, this is a different message ID, break the fax out that way. FTP, we actually had a customer in Salt Lake City where the fax server was, but they wanted the fax images stored on another server in their Chicago office. So we would use FTP to get those faxes delivered to that Chicago office. The HTTP notification, we can use that to push faxes into a SharePoint document library. We did a project for the Canadian healthcare system where they wanted faxes automatically pushed into a specific document library. So they used our HTTP notification. Email is pretty standard, and then the templates in there allow you to build out what kind of information you want in the email. We even can put thumbnails in there of maybe the cover page and the first page, so people don't have to actually open up the fax and the attachment to see what came in. They've just got a quick visual reference right in the body of the email what was contained in that fax. In the fax tab, we actually can use that for scenarios where somebody wants to send a confirmation that they received a fax. So that's something that the IIS text can help build, and they're, like Julie said earlier, they're very familiar with the product and able to leverage all of the advanced capabilities that are included with FaxCore. And then a little bit about our licensing. It's very similar to the WriteFax model, if you're familiar with that. Unlimited user license, we don't care how many people use the system, and then the solution cost is determined by the total number of fax lines that you need to accommodate your volume. Our base system includes 2 fax line licenses, and we only have 2 versions of the product. There's standard server that supports up to 8 fax lines, and it comes with a SQL Express database that has a storage limit of 10 gig. But I did a calculation one time, and based on an 8-port system, you're going to be able to store 2 to 3 years worth of data in that SQL Express database. So, it's perfectly sized. For larger systems, more than 8 lines, then you get our enterprise server. Again, it comes with 2 lines, but it also includes a SQL database, a standard SQL server. So there's no limitations on storage. And on this subject of SQL, if you maybe have SQL running in your organization and maybe it's on highly available hardware or in a cluster, or maybe you're using SQL 2012 with the always-on feature, FaxCore can attach to an existing SQL server and run as an instance against it. So you're able to take advantage of that extra time and expense that you went through to make it highly available. And we like to keep our price list really simple. So email connectors, PDF capability, all the things that might be an extra add-on with other fax server products are standard within FaxCore. The only thing that we've got extra in here is obviously additional fax lines if you need it. And our MFP connector model is very straightforward. It's just one flat price, so we don't care how many you connect. Whether you connect 1 or 100, it's the same price, with the exception of Konica Minolta. We do have a 3-tier system there, like 1 to 5 machines, 6 to 15, and then 16 and more. Reason being that being part of their BEST program is pretty pricey, so we need to have a little bit more payback on those connectors. The SAP gateway is there's a charge for that because of the SAP Connect component and our file gateway that's needed. And our print driver for Citrix and Terminal Server, actually that's no longer an extra charged item, but I listed it in here because not everybody's printer driver can work in a Terminal Server environment, for example. And then RoboFax, that's a utility we built to go out and actually test every component or every process involved in sending and receiving a fax. FaxCore will write a lot of information to event logs, and we have our own error logs. But if there's external processes that are broken, you're not going to know that from the fax server error logs. For example, I remember years ago, the Denver Post here in Denver was using our system, and they called up and they said, hey, we're not, FaxCore's down, we're not getting any emails or anything, and we jump on the server and everything's running fine. They had made a change to their internal DNS that stop the flow of emails from users to the fax server and vice versa. So with RoboFax, what we do is it's a robot that actually sends a test fax every whatever interval you want, every 30 minutes, every hour, etc. And then we put in a grace period where if it doesn't get that test fax back within, say, 7 minutes, it shoots off an alarm to an administrator letting them know, hey, there's a problem with my fax ecosystem, as I call it. So what it does is, ideally it will send an email to the fax server with an attachment. So that's testing, can I get an email from a desktop PC to the fax server, and then can it convert that attachment and render it, and then it'll actually call a number. Are my outbound fax lines up? Am I able to place a call? And then we'll have it come back in on another line to another number, checking am I able to receive calls? Is my PSTN or my FOIP drivers up? And then it will route that fax back to that RoboFax user and deliver it via email. So we've tested every component in the fax server ecosystem to make sure that it's running. And it really paid off well. A lot of people have used it, and it's allowed them to get a jump on fixing a problem rather than waiting for the user community to let them know. And then lastly, we have some fax scan devices. That's another slide or two in, and I'll explain that. A pretty clever little device. And then as far as how FaxCore is deployed, we have several different options. We call it FOIP in a box or FOIP box appliance, or it could just be our mini appliance. But basically, we have a 1U rack mount server that comes with the fax board installed, or the FOIP drivers, or even a connection to EtherFax, which we'll touch on momentarily. But that's perfect for people that maybe have not gone to the server virtualization, or they want to still use a Brook Trout fax board plugged into a T1, for example. And you can't run a fax board in a virtual machine. So we make it really easy with the operating system and the FaxCore software and the appropriate fax board already pre-installed, ready to rack up. And it's a pretty powerful machine. Windows Server 2012 on there, 8 gigs of RAM, fast CPU, and a terabyte hard drive. And then if you are using fax over IP drivers or connection to EtherFax, a VM is actually our preferred implementation, where you provide a virtual machine. We support Hyper-V, Citrix Zen Server, and VMware. So you can install FaxCore in a VM and leverage that uptime, and it works with all of the advanced functions of vMotion and things like that offered by VMware. And then EtherFax, actually I'm not going to talk too much about that because that's an upcoming webinar on Thursday, but EtherFax is basically a fax board in the cloud. So we've had a lot of customers that want to move maybe to the cloud, or what we call a partly cloudy approach, where for some reasons like maybe document retention, integrations in with back office applications or MFPs, they'll want to have the fax server software still on their premise, but rather than having to mess around with fax boards and phone lines and media gateways and FOIP drivers and all of that, EtherFax appears to FaxCore like a locally installed fax board, but in reality it's out in the data center. So a lot of advantages to that, which we'll cover on Thursday, or the people at Instant Info have been working with it for years and very, very good at explaining the benefits of the EtherFax system. And then this next one, that's just a snapshot of our appliance. It says it's a 1U rack mount server with everything that you need pre-installed and ready to go. Comes with a 3-year warranty, and that version has been out for about 3 or 4 years now. We've been building appliances for about 10, so we've got that process down. These are very reliable. So I previously mentioned our fax scan devices. This has saved companies a lot of money and allowed really simplified things. Basically what we did is we took an audio codes ATA, analog terminal adapter, and we have custom firmware that goes in, that is flashed onto that device, and we have a connector component up on our FaxCore server. So what it allows you to do is keep the fax machine but eliminate the fax line. So rather than having the fax machine or the MFP, with a fax kit plugged into a phone line and using the telephone network or your PBX to send and receive faxes, you can take the phone line out of the wall, plug it into this ATA. It provides dial tone. So the person walking up to the fax machine, they don't know anything has changed. They hear dial tone, they send their fax. The little fax scan ATA, as we generically call it, receives the fax, and then it logs into the FaxCore server just as a user would, and then uses HTTPS to push that fax image up to the fax server along with the number that was entered at the keypad. So then FaxCore gets that, sends it out to the destination fax machine, and then once the fax is successfully delivered, it creates a confirmation page. The fax scan ATA, it logs into FaxCore server every 1 minute, and it'll say, oh, I've got a file here for me, and it'll pull it down, call the fax machine, and deliver it. So we can preserve that entire paper process where they got the the document that they faxed out, and then they want to take the confirmation page, maybe staple it to the fax, so they've got the proof there. So it allows for disparate locations. Maybe you could just disconnect the phone lines at these different locations, or even in your office. Port those numbers into your PBX or up to Etherfax, and so then it works in reverse as well. If the fax comes into that fax number that was previously connected to the fax machine, it'll now come into the FaxCore server. We assign that fax to that fax scan ATA. It checks in, pulls the fax down, calls the fax machine, delivers it just as if it had come in over the phone line. And a pretty low price. The ROI on these is usually just a couple of months, especially when the analog phone lines are costing $40, $50, $60, $70 a month, depending on where you're at in the country. So, it's something that, we like to say that we've got everything covered, from desktop PCs to applications to MFPs and even fax machines. We can incorporate into one central FaxCore server. And I believe that covers everything. And then at this time, we're going to open it up to Q&A, and Chris Kaiser, our product manager, is going to be fielding some of those questions. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Tom, so much. So much great information. And yet I feel like we've really just scratched the surface of everything there is to know about FaxCore. I am looking at a whole list of questions that have come in during your presentation, and I know we're running a little bit, just a minute or two past schedule, so we're going to get through as many of these as we can, but please rest assured, if you did ask a question and we don't have time to get to it today, we will follow up with you directly and make sure that you get the information you need. First question that came in, does this use Silverlight? I'm going to send that over to Chris Kaiser.
No, we do not use Silverlight.
Okay, easy answer. What about multi-tenancy? Does FaxCore support that?
It was designed initially to be a multi-tenant environment. Yes.
All right.
And let me just elaborate on that too, because I forgot to mention that earlier. The multi-tenancy allows you, if you've got an Active Directory structure with multiple OUs, you can basically create a mirror image of that AD structure within FaxCore and sync different users into, from OUs into different child domains, as we call it in FaxCore.
Great. Okay. Let's see. WriteFax can utilize desktop scanners to scan straight into WriteFax. Can we still use our desktop scanners in a single-step fax process? It sounds like a Chris question.
Yeah, and it really depends on what the scanner is. If we look at a Fujitsu or a little Canon, there's different avenues that those devices can take. There could have been a WriteFax connector installed on the Fujitsu or something like that, or maybe they're using AutoStore as some middleware to get that. But we can absolutely work with IIS and look at those devices and come up with a solution. Okay. We have many customers that do use, yes, desktop scanners to send faxes through FaxCore. It's just, we just need to look at which model, make, etc.
Got it. How about this one? How do you meet the requirement to receive a fax and then permanently remove it from any system?
Oh, where's the fax coming in? Is it coming directly into FaxCore? Is it coming in through Etherfax?
Yeah, that's a good question. So this question came in from one of our audience members today. We will follow up directly, get a little more information on this question and provide that answer directly. Probably the better way to go about that. Let's see. Question about SAP integration. Do you support SAP Connect?
Yes.
I love these quick answers. These are good. How about this? For fax routing, can you have a fax go to an email and also auto print? In the event the printout is lost, can it be recovered via email?
Absolutely. It's going to be retained within your inbox in FaxCore. So FaxCore is going to have every message that was sent from you and received by your user ID in FaxCore, which is mapped to your Active Directory ID. And yes, if you did lose that printout that automatically came in, you could go back in your inbox. But we can, as Tom had mentioned earlier in the presentation, that when a message comes in to your user ID, it can go to a printer, post to SharePoint, send your email, and FTP, file drop to your network share, all on the same transaction. Boom, 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 boom. Our dispatcher will push it to all those locations, absolutely.
Nice, good, thank you. This is a question we get asked actually quite often. I'm going to send this one over to Fernando Lopez, the IIS sales engineer. What is the process for migrating my WriteFax environment to FaxCore? Fernando?
That's a really good question, and actually it really depends on the size and the complexity of your WriteFax environment. Most of the time the applications that connect to WriteFax and other factors make a big difference. With IIS, Instant Info just has a unique position to put all these migrations together, and then with the depth of and expertise of both WriteFax and FaxCore, we can migrate that together. But we'll ensure that migration is seamless. And if any of you are interested in learning more about that process, definitely let us know, because we can migrate your WriteFax environment over to FaxCore and provide a free consultation if you guys have an idea of, or want to have an idea of what that looks like.
Thanks, Fernando. Here's a related question I think you can answer for us. If I have WriteFax with EtherFax, can I keep my numbers if I switch to FaxCore?
I'll take that one, and the answer is yes, absolutely. That's a very easy transition as well.
Perfect. Okay. Let's see. Here's a slightly more specific question. Is there an outgoing queue that can be managed, including canceling, pausing, and reprioritizing faxes for all users? Maybe a Chris question?
Yeah, that would be a Chris question. Chris, are you still there?
Mute. I'm not. Okay, there we go. I was stuck in a mute. Couldn't unmute. Yes, there's a message queue. It's under our fax agent. You're able to monitor the fax. The fax is going in or out. As far as pausing, there's a pausing capability and a resume option. If you want to reschedule a message, we can do that as well. There's also an option we have in there called force reset. It really kind of puts it back at the beginning of the workflow. Maybe you had to make a modification to some dialing rules, and you're like, oh no, I have all these messages sitting in my outbound. They don't have the 9 to dial out. You can go ahead and take all those messages, force a reset. In FaxCore, that's just putting them back at the beginning of the workflow. So it'll go through and look at those new dialing rules that you set up. So yes, there's a lot of options like that.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Here's one more for you. How secure is FaxCore, and is it HIPAA compliant?
FaxCore is extremely secure, being a web-based, using .NET, latest and greatest development. We're adhering to Microsoft security, and so patching continues. FaxCore is not affected. .NET framework updates are introduced. FaxCore's, right there. We're not telling you to not install this. So we're following Microsoft's security pattern. You can absolutely add a SSL certificate to FaxCore. Being a web-based product, you can tie that down to HTTPS. HIPAA compliant. We want to work with IIS and your company to see what your requirements are for HIPAA compliancy. Every company is a little different. Everyone has a different idea of what they need to have. FaxCore implementations around the world are HIPAA compliant today, yes. So the possibility is there. We need to work with you, make sure that we understand what your requirements are internally, and make you HIPAA compliant as well.
And to add on to that, I'm sorry, Julie. Just
no,
one
please.
real quick. Yeah, to add on that, FaxCore is also PCI compliant. We added a feature in there where you can pick a box on the FaxCore server, and every fax message that's what they call at rest in the fax server can be encrypted, 256 AES, I believe. So, you know, an extra dose of security in there is available.
Perfect. Well, I am looking at the time, and I see we are just about almost 15 minutes past our schedule. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today, especially those of you who have hung in here during this extra time for Q&A. A very special thank you to Tom Linhart and Chris Kaiser. I really appreciate you being here with us and giving us this introduction to FaxCore. As I mentioned, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to learn and understand about this product and all of its features and capabilities. So for those of you interested in learning more, I really encourage you to reach out to us. Drop us a quick email at info@instantinfo.com. We will get right back to you with any additional questions you may have. And we'll also be spending some time over the next couple of days reaching out to all of you to make sure you did get all the information you needed and all of your questions answered. So with that, I am going to wrap up our event today. And again, thanks to all of my presenters. Thank you, Fernando. Appreciate you being here as well. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. Hopefully we'll see many of you back here on Thursday as we do a similar overview of the EtherFax product. Until then, have a great day. Thanks, everyone.